it's just kind of figures now in a bank account, and it's great and it's exciting. You think, God, I can do all the things I want to do. It's almost like the pressure comes off your shoulders of, okay, I've raised investment now. This is the hardest money I'll ever have to raise. But then the pressure goes back on of, now you've got investors and people who have committed their time and money into your business. So you've got to now do what you said you were going to do. So, but I think it's exciting.
Set up in 2019, something using AI, which was way ahead of its game. I mean, it wasn't really in the sort of, I mean, people obviously knew about AI, but it wasn't something as mainstream as it is now. But like you're using AI to develop social media posts and basically cut the times that it takes to make social media posts down from about 2.5 hours to 2 minutes. I just wanted to talk to you about that, how that came about, the sort of early days of Social Republic into VULSE, and then what led you to your investment journey, which is what these podcasts are going to be all about. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. And yeah, excited to talk about the journey.
Yeah, cool. So how did that all start then? The Social Republic to VULSE sort of journey, and then the decision to go and get funding.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people say about accountants isn't true. And I think a lot of them can be, I think more modern kind of accountants are very savvy in terms of looking at industry trends and looking towards the future. And I had a discussion with my accountant back in kind of 2019 and said to him, what is the future of agency and how do you see a social media agency in particular, a very competitive sector? How do we go forward and build something that can last a lot longer than an agency, or can help to build growth? How can we expand the team, and what sort of things are you seeing? And he had some really good examples of agencies that had started to build data and started to build products, and then they either went down the route of kind of splitting the two or combining them together, and then they built an asset which they could ultimately sell to either a competitor or a VC or whoever it may be. So I'd always been excited about the product side, and I think it was him that kind of really gave me that drive to think, okay, let's do this and let's actually go for it.
Okay, brilliant. And so at what point on that journey from going from Social Republic to VULSE were you saying, right, the only way forward is to now seek investment? What sort of triggered that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, startup owners should definitely think about it before they think like it's a golden ticket. I was part of the NatWest Accelerator program, where the majority of startup owners on that program were seeking investment. It seemed like the thing to do. Majority of people kind of needed the investment, or that was their main kind of aim. And I did have a lot of discussions with people who said it's not actually for everyone. You might not potentially kind of need investment. Some people don't. Some industries move a lot slower, so you can actually kind of build up a little bit of revenue and start to invest wisely, and then you don't necessarily need it. So those conversations kind of led me down the route of, okay, do I actually need this? And I came to the decision that I did. And it wasn't kind of just for monetary reasons. That obviously helps, having that injection of cash allows you to do more exciting things like reinvest in people and start to hire and run ad campaigns that you might not have thought of before. But it was more for the kind of that thought leadership, that mentoring, that having almost like an extended team on your side. I think that was more important for me. I was going into an industry or a sector that I wasn't kind of experienced in. So very experienced within the social media industry, but then you're going into software as a service, and you're looking at AI, and it's not something I'd done before. So I thought, well, I'm going to need that kind of mentorship through it. So a combination of the financial reasons. Obviously, it helps get you ahead. At the time, there wasn't as much of a pressure, and then ChatGPT did us all a huge favor and kind of sped things up. We were already kind of doing this, so then that was a real kind of boost in terms of, okay, there's going to be a lot of market entrants now, so we really need to do this a lot faster than we kind of predicted previously.
But you started that. If you started Vulse in 2019, I know obviously those technologies were around, but like I said, they were not in the mainstream at all. No one was talking about it. So how did it come about that the sort of urgency? What was the timeline between sort of 2019 and 2023? Because I know, I'm not sure when the funding actually came. Is it quite recently that it came in? Because you would have had like a few years sitting on that technology almost, with no one else talking about it in the mainstream. So talk us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting journey, right, in terms of when the investment actually landed. That was around, I think, about March 2023. So, as this recording goes out, last month basically. We were starting to build our own models and work on MVPs because there wasn't a huge rush. There was nothing out there that kind of existed like this. You had your general kind of scheduling tools like Buffer and Hootsuite, and these were really big players, and they never really focused on LinkedIn like we do. There's nothing out there, so we thought, well, we've kind of got a bit of time to do this and play around with it. So we started to build our product in a different language, using a different framework, which seemed right at the time, being 2019. And then we partnered with Manchester Metropolitan University as part of the AI Foundry that they have. And we actually started to build our own language models without the use of OpenAI. So OpenAI was there. Nobody was talking about it, like you say. Hardly anyone was using it. It was all being tested. And I do feel like I don't know how to describe it, but the release of ChatGPT into the mainstream, I think, is actually a massive boost. I'm the sort of person where I think it's great to have competition, and I think that competition drives me in particular. And if there wasn't competition, you kind of sit back and think, well, I've got time and I don't have to do this. Whereas it also raises awareness of the technology. So that learning curve or understanding of the technology is kind of reduced because everyone was on LinkedIn talking about it and everyone was trying out do different things. So if we tried to release a product that included this technology that nobody knew about, there could be some skepticism. People don't understand it. People are scared of it. So it's almost like people have already had those conversations. And then now we're about to kind of release our product, which combines kind of OpenAI, it combines our own language models, and it's going to be very powerful. And yeah, I'm personally very excited.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. But how did you kind of pitch that then? So were you looking for investors that already knew about these technologies, ChatGPT on the horizon, stuff like that, and possibly were using it? Or were they more open to the idea that they knew that this was coming? How did that come about? How did you sort of target the right investors, and how did you prepare your pitch in a way that, some of them might not have, some of them might be cold to the technology, some of them might be warm. How did that sort of come about?
Yeah, I think this is a huge lesson in pitching and raising investment. And I'd heard so many times from so many different people that you should really dumb down your pitch deck, and only a 5-year-old or your grandma could understand it, and don't use terminology that people might not understand. But I was kind of I was thinking to myself, well, we kind of want people who do understand this technology. So we should be using these terms and we should be using these keywords, because if they don't understand it, are they the right investor for us? Probably not. So it was kind of trying to get that balance of, not using too many keywords, but people kind of understood it. And at the time, before kind of ChatGPT, there was still a little bit around AI, and people didn't necessarily understand it. And I think from an investor point of view, it's a case of, oh, you've mentioned AI, but are you just using AI because it's a sexy kind of topical keyword? So I learned a lot from kind of pitch reviews and pitch deck reviews around, if you're going to use these words and use these topics, then explain how you're actually going to implement them. And there's a balance in that between giving too much away and telling them how everything works, and people understanding it, but also getting people excited about it. I think for us, ChatGPT in particular, and the kind of surgence or growth of OpenAI in particular, And then now you've seen other technologies, like Bing and stuff. That it kind of came at the right time in terms of investment. It meant that investors were kind of like thinking, oh, people are using this is the future. And I think we kind of just managed to kind of hit that sweet spot in terms of when people were talking about it and saying to people, well, we've already kind of been doing this previously, and we just want to harness this technology and kind of get ahead as quickly as possible.
So what was that balance then in that pitch deck? Then did you decided to go quite full on with the AI speak, but I'm guessing you want to also let's say find that sweet spot of that balance. Were you considering to link to any more technical papers if they wanted to go a bit deeper into this technology, if they wanted to do a bit of due diligence on it, or have some experts that to look into it for them?
Yeah, so I think the work that we did with MMU, Manchester Metropolitan University, I think the work with them really helped because it showed that we were serious about this technology. It showed that we'd already built kind of a prototype. And the funny thing about investment is it's almost like if you were already generating millions and millions of pounds, you would have need investment. So it's almost like there's always something missing within your pitch deck. So traction being one of them, or kind of an MVP. There's always something missing, and there'll always be an investor or an investment group that'll say, well, it's not the right time for us because of X. So you're never really going to hit, you're never really going to please kind of everybody. But I think the fact that we've gone out, we'd worked with a university, we'd built a prototype, we tested it, we built our own language model, which then you have to kind of prove, is it protectable? So you have to think about that as well. So the question always is, well, what's to stop me doing this? And there's you always get that question, and my kind of answer to that was, well, there are a lot of things within many industries that people could kind of go and do, but they won't. But you kind of need to reassure investors, I guess, that this is a unique piece of technology, and I think that really does kind of then get them excited and think about the possibilities. And you'll have these conversations, and I compare it to going on a date almost. You go on lots of dates with lots of investors, and you think it's going well with one of them, and you're getting like towards the end, and then it just doesn't happen, and you kind of have to just be prepared for that. So
yeah, I use that dating analogy a lot as well, finding the right match. So I mean, I think the thing you were talking about, uniqueness, I think the thing that I thought was really special about it is it's the marriage between your, like, if you draw a Venn diagram of your expertise in social media, and then you drew the AI expertise, and that's where you cross, and that's where like the unique sort of special sweet spot of what you do is really. And I think that is something that you almost don't need to protect, because no one else has got your knowledge of that. And then if you look at your team in terms of the AI stuff and Metropolitan University, I think that's what gives it the unique stuff. So I always sort of say to people about patents, a lot of investors will, even if you've got a patent, they'll go, well, let's just assume you don't, because if someone wants to copy it, they will, and they'll have a lot more money and lawyers and all that sort of stuff, resources to do that. But yeah, I just want to sort of talk about again, how did the outreach go, and how did you start that process, and what did you target the investors, or did you have someone to help you connect, and how many did you reach out to get the investment in the end and find the right investor?
Yeah, I probably am like many entrepreneurs that have raised investment in terms of really starting too broad initially, and you have to make these mistakes to learn from them. And I think one thing you just mentioned around kind of experience is a huge thing that I didn't realize how powerful it was until kind of we got to the end, and it was not too late, but I thought to myself, oh, I could have done this earlier, because one thing that competitors, for example, don't have, or other businesses don't have, is that 15 years knowledge of working in an industry. It's studying at a university in America when Facebook came out, Mark Zuckerberg just released it, and having worked in that industry for so long. And I think that is kind of, you can't buy that, and it is invaluable. And I think one of my mistakes was not promoting that. But in terms of actually raising, I think the first mistake in terms of like pitch deck, basic things just not being there, like, or who's your addressable market, those sort of things. And I would advise to anyone, send your deck out to everybody, because they're not going to copy it. If they really, if someone really, really wants to do it, they're probably not going to anyway. Send your deck out to everyone, and get feedback, especially from people who kind of been there and done it. I can't remember the name of the company, but they offered like a free deck review service, and I think they got that many, they had to kind of stop it. But I got some really invaluable advice, just really basic things we were missing. And I think our investment journey probably took about 2 years. Not full time, because obviously then you're trying to work on the product and improve that and build relationships. But yeah, so just constantly updating the deck, working with a designer as well, just to make sure it looked good. I think that was one of the best pieces of feedback we got, was it looks great. There's just not the right information, or it's too long. And then making the mistake of going out to too many investors and not tailoring the offering. And I've seen recently, and I laughed to myself thinking about, I made this mistake of even just the opening not being exciting enough. And what you think might kind of excite an investor, it really isn't. So there are certain ways of doing it now. I've realized, in terms of how to get their attention and what they actually want to see. And I think as we got closer to that kind of raise, there was a lot more refinement in terms of, just little basic things, like if you're approaching a VC, for example, who they do minimum ticket size of, I don't know, 2 million, and you're only raising 250, it's kind of a pointless conversation, and you're better off focusing on the kind of pre-seed, seed, like SEIS stuff. Actually go to the ones, and then taking the time to look for investors that align with your ethos and have invested in companies like yours previously as well. I think that really helps.
How did you find that information?
A lot of Google. Obviously, then ChatGPT came out, so we took the time to use that and use open AI technologies. Obviously, it's not live information, but it still gave good results. Networking through LinkedIn. A lot of Google, obviously, like angels groups, and just generally asking people, who they would recommend. Obviously, putting things out on LinkedIn to say, look, we are fundraising. Please, can you help us?
And was that in the form of advertising, posting? I mean, you're a social media guru anyway, so let's talk about how you did that then through LinkedIn. That's an interesting story.
Yeah, so funnily enough, on the NatWest Accelerator, there's a guy called, you probably know him, Dan Kelsall, and his content always made me laugh. And he doesn't care about like what people think about him, and his company's called Offended, and he's all about kind of breaking the mold. And I loved what he did, and I thought, do you know what, I need to stop being so professional, because it's not really my personality. If you meet me, and I'm not that sort of person, that I need to kind of have my own, not brand, but I need to share my own personality. And this is going back to we're talking like 2017, 2018, and LinkedIn then was a very, very different place than it is now. And even though I started to share say memes or like my own kind of personal stories, the algorithm hadn't really caught up. It was very, I don't know how to describe it, but it wasn't at a place where it is now. So there wasn't a huge opportunity for growth. But I feel like, because I did start early, and I thought, you know what, this is my personality, this is who I am, I'm just going to keep going. And fortunately, they kind of update the algorithm, and they prioritize more kind of personal content. And then people started to react well to it. Some people not so well, but that kind of obviously then creates controversy and comments, and then reach to a place where it is now, where it's all about building your personal brand and empower to the employee and that sort of thing. So I just think doing it so often, so early, actually did help, even though the engagement wasn't really there as it is now. That's
interesting. So you were doing stuff that people are doing now back then, but the algorithm hadn't caught up with it. But it was obviously effective. You did get some interest from it, right? You got people seeing it and going, yeah, I know someone that would invest in this. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, and as a business, Social Republic in particular, and it makes me laugh when I see these posts like, we've only ever spent $1 on advertising and we made 400 million, whatever it is. But we generally have never done any advertising in terms of actual ad spend. It's just been all through kind of LinkedIn going back to kind of, you started the business in 2015. So since then, so there was hardly any engagement, but it eventually just kind of, that snowball effect, and it did start to work.
So what happened then? Did an investor contact you directly, or was it through one of your cold emails or one of the posts, or how did you actually find the investor that invested in you?
Funnily enough, we'd already kind of pitched to this investment firm, but they obviously have a lot of applications.
Yep.
And you kind of have to cut through the noise very quickly. And maybe we didn't do it in the right way. So it was actually through a referral through a funding service. They obviously take a little bit of commission, but ultimately you're getting a warmer lead through them. And if it wasn't for them, it probably would have taken a little bit longer. And it's just kind of getting that first conversation. And obviously you haven't got a lot of time, and you kind of got to impress them straight away. They've seen your deck, and they were very interested in the technology and previously invested in similar companies. So it was a good start. And we were speaking to 2 or 3, and then made a decision ultimately to go with one out of the 3.
Right. So did you enter into a due diligence process with all 3?
Yes, which was really interesting. And I'm sure
tell us about that.
we'll go on.
Yeah.
Yes. Obviously, we'd had an offer the year prior by another investment firm, focused on SEIS. We had changes within the business on the day I was due to sign the investment, and I think in hindsight, for everybody involved, I think it was the best thing. And it meant we lost out on the investment. And I remember going out, and I remember went out for dinner, and bought a bottle of wine to celebrate. And I thought, I'm not going to go mad, I'm just going to have a little subdued kind of celebration, because the money's not in the bank. And it fell through on that day, on the last day, final hour sort of thing. But I really do think it was a good thing, even though it kind of set us back a little bit. But we'd already then been through their due diligence process, which helped. But then when you've got 2 or 3, their processes are all different. They're all different, and it's frustrating in a way, because you're thinking, well, I've already told this person this piece of information. I've already told this person, and you kind of have to just bite the bullet and do it. And it is important, from their end. And it's like, we've already put together a cash flow, but they want it in a different format. So then you've got to spend the time doing that. And you'll do it for companies, and it won't lead anywhere. You have to take the time out to kind of sacrifice, I guess. So yeah, that was quite interesting, quite intense, but necessary. And do you know what? I feel like we learned a lot going through that process.
You learned a lot about your own business.
Yeah, in terms of cash flows, worst case, best case, as much as we put in, and we spent a lot of time kind of putting the hours together, looking at it maybe in a different way, looking at the scenarios, I think was actually really useful. So yeah, we did get a lot out of that.
Well, you were coming out of, you had the successful business already, 7-figure business turnover. But was the investment purely for this new product, or was Social Republic part of that investment as well?
No, so we kept it separate, separate business, separate focus. Some companies keep them together, but it was always the kind of plan to keep it separate. And having an agency was, I had to kind of obviously explain what my plans were in terms of where my focus was going to lie, and promises and things like that. So luckily I kind of already, built up a plan, and that was already in place. So always the plan to kind of keep it separate.
Was there any friction from investors about that? Did they want a piece of Social Republic as well? Yeah,
we had these discussions. Some were not interested whatsoever. Right. Some wanted to just make that company disappear, or and then some wanted to buy it. And then there was lots of kind of different offers on the table, which was, it's a good thing, because then you've got options. But the agency, will always run, by someone else, and then VULSE obviously is my focus now.
And have you stepped back a bit from Social Republic now?
Yeah, I've had to. Investors want to see that your focus is in what they've invested in. So they wanted to see what the plans were for that, what that kind of looked like, where my time would split, and when eventually you kind of go full when do you go full time within the other business? So yeah, you have to, but it's worthwhile.
Okay, so you were basically, I just want to go through the due diligence process and look at all the things that you had to prepare, because I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of stuff that they actually ask for. So do you want to just sort of list the things that you had to do and what order you had to do them in when you entered that, when you made a match, they like you, you like them. Okay, let's go into that due diligence process. What's like the first few things you had to do and how did that progress?
Yeah, so so one of them that we were speaking to, one of the kind of the final three, theirs was a lot more around kind of having conversations and asking questions, which I kind of enjoyed, because you kind of build a rapport with them and you get to know them and you think they're interested. And then for them, it was just literally on questions on a Google Doc, what's your plans for this? Let's talk about competitors and, route to market and stuff like that. A bit more of a kind of a business plan. So if you've already got a lot of that information, you can kind of, not copy and paste it and then edit it so the more information you've got on your business, the better, because it'll save you so much time in the future. I actually ended up building like a master sheet of, here's our URL, here's our founder's URL, so my LinkedIn URL, the team, for example, little things like that. You can just, every time you get asked for a piece of information by an investor, save it in a master document and they can just refer back to it. And it saves so much time. Investment firm that we went with, theirs was a little bit more formal in terms of giving access to like a drive, for example, and then having to go through certain things like one being around eligibility for SAIS, for example. So that being one being around finances, so base cash flow, worst case scenario, best case scenario, that sort of stuff. Obviously any kind of previous revenue, all the financial stuff. Then there's all the legal stuff, and then there's the general kind of day-to-day kind of business overview questions, I would say.
How
so it's
much...
almost like,
go on.
I was just going to say, it's almost like rewriting your business plan ultimately, and that's why it can get a little bit frustrating, because you think, well, I've already provided this, but then there's lots of people within that business who've never seen this information, and it's all got to be in one place. So if you've already got it saved, then it just saves a hell of a lot of time.
How long had VULSE been going for? How many years of data did you have on the financials before, when they were asking for it? Because it was still quite new, right?
Yeah, so we're still, I would say, a couple of years worth of information. Not luckily we were kind of in terms of revenue, it was minimal, because we were just testing it. We were testing pricing. We were seeing kind of how the market reacted to certain prices, little things like that. So it wasn't huge amounts in terms of revenue, which is almost like do you talk about it because there's not a lot, or do you actually use it as as a benefit to say, whilst we understand it's not a lot of revenue in terms of what you potentially will be looking for, but it is some. We've actually gone out, we've tested, and we've actually generated some revenue. With your investment, we can reach X, for example. So it became less of a taboo. We raised a small amount to actually being a really turning the kind of weakness into a strength, I guess.
And just I mean, I haven't asked this yet, which I should have done at the start, but how much did you actually end up raising?
So we raised 150,000.
And had you raised before for Social Republic or any other raise or any other company?
Never. And
it was from it was from a company, not an angel, not an individual. Who? Yeah. It would. So you have to name the company, but like, what sort of organization was it?
Yeah, so it's SAIS company, not angels. Yeah, SAIS focused.
Can you just sort of, I mean, I think a lot of people who I work with sort of want to sort of separate the information that goes into the pitch deck to get the initial interest up, and then the other set of information, which is much more detailed in terms of the finances. How much of that did you put into the pitch deck to sort of warm them up, especially in terms of projections? Because they're always very difficult to work out, right?
really difficult to work out because it's not necessarily a finger in the air, but you've got to make some assumptions. But I think we spent I'd say at least about 18 months putting together projections that were constantly changing and going down to really finer detail in terms of what's our churn rate going to be, how much is it, what is the cost per click, to get someone on our website, how many people are going to come off, and then looking at industry averages of even little things like, if we ask a user to sign up with a credit card, what percentage of people are actually going to leave the site? So we went into a lot of detail and got the finances ready for an investor and in a format, and used an accountant who'd specializes in those kind of cash flows for investors and what they want to see. And 99% of the time they're great, but they want it in their own formats. So you have to do it again, which is always fun. So yeah, especially in our industry, we obviously took information from other businesses within the market, what kind of price point they were hitting and what's their churn rate and things like that. And it's quite difficult to kind of look 3 to 5 years in the future in an industry that changes every single day. A new piece of technology could come out tomorrow and it could increase revenue 10 times. So it's quite difficult, and you kind of, whilst you want that hockey stick almost, you kind of want to avoid that, so it doesn't look like, oh, they've just kind of gone down the same route as everyone else, sort of, in terms of their projections. So actually, yeah, saying to them, like, we've really spent a lot of time putting these together. These mean something, and I can't stress enough like how understanding your numbers is so important, because you'll be asked so many times about your figures, turnover, gross profit, everything else. And then obviously how you're going to get those users. So you will be kind of grilled on financial projections.
Do you think you could have put those numbers together without the external help of an accountant? Was there someone in house that could have helped you? I mean, you got your own finance people in house, right? But you actually wanted to get a specialized help on that.
Yeah, I think it was definitely beneficial going out to somebody. This lady, she's freelance accountant, so having just that knowledge of what investors are actually looking for, and putting it in a format that actually reads well. There was so much detail and data in there. It was incredible, but I really do think it massively helps to tick that box when they're kind of looking at. It's the first thing investors ask for: pitch deck, financial projections, and I think even some of them were quite surprised at the level of detail and said, we haven't really seen anything this detail before from a pre-seed business. So it can shoot you in the foot sometimes, but we just said, we're serious about this, and we wanted to give you as much information as possible. And we've done a lot of research.
So were there any big surprises during this phase? Anything that you weren't prepared for, that you didn't expect? Anything like that?
I think once you kind of get to the end and you really have some concrete offers and you're about to raise, I think, whilst I'd like to say there's no surprises, there always are. I think you've been through this journey and you've learned a lot, you've seen a lot, you've spoken to a lot of people. I think there are pretty much surprises along the way. The surprises which will become not surprises eventually are, you really think someone's interested and you have a great conversation, it's working well, and they have one conversation with one other person who has a different view, and it doesn't go anywhere. And then you might be surprised with an investment firm or angel where you don't hear from them for a while and you think, oh, that's kind of dead in the water, and then they come back and they make you an offer, and it's a nice surprise to have. But I would say, yeah, there's surprises along the way, and never really get comfortable. It's almost like buying a house. You kind of want to enjoy the experience, and only when you start to have conversations with people is I would say the exciting part. The part when you can get excited and people are actually taking you seriously, and you kind of feel like you gain some momentum. I think you've kind of got to take it on the chin a little bit in terms of the knockbacks, because there'll be so many, and even if you really refine who you want to speak to, not every single investor is going to be, it's not going to be the right time for them, or they're just not interested in the offering, and then they might not be right for you either. So
yeah, I mean, have you got an idea about the sheer volume of investors that you reached out to that would have read the deck and the number of conversations, and how that sort of funnels down to, you know, those 3 that you ended up talking to?
Yeah, we've got everything listed. I might write a book about it one day of
Yeah.
investment or something. Yeah, we tried to not approach too many people, but I think once you kind of, you feel like you're not making any progress, you think, well, I might, you know, extend it a bit further, you know, I might focus on other businesses. We actually got a list of around about, I would say, 2,000 firms, but then that had to be filtered down in terms of, obviously, like average ticket size, location, and then you have to look at interest. And then I think we probably got it down to about, I'd say around about 80 different firms.
And how did you do that? How did you find that information?
That was actually provided by our accountant. So it was an active kind of investor list. It was a global list. It was absolutely huge. So you get it down from your 2,000 down to about 80, and then try to kind of, again, narrow it down. Are these people actually interested in what we're doing? Did they invest? Is it the right time? And then I would say we probably got that down to about 30, and then really started actively kind of pitching.
Okay, so you got the 30, but they don't know you, right? So how did you approach them? What did you do? Cold email, phone them up, LinkedIn? How did you get hold of them? How did you get them hooked?
Yeah, everything. Connect with them on LinkedIn. Yeah,
multiple rounds of attack in different
directions. Outside the house.
Yeah.
No, it never got that bad. It never got that desperate that we did that. But yeah, everything. First of all, obviously, connect with them on LinkedIn. Check their website as well. You know, in terms of, again, are they the right fit? And sometimes everything on the outside, like the website and then what they talk about, seems like the right fit. And then when you actually get in touch, they say it's not the right time for us, or we've moved on and just haven't updated the website copy, whatever it is. So yeah, connect on LinkedIn. Obviously, inquiry through the website. Emails as well, cold emails, and then always trying to get feedback. You know, even if you do ever get a response, because you know some you might not get a response from. If you do get a response, always asking for feedback. You know, is there anything we can do to improve it? You know, why is it kind of the right time? And I've still got a list of investors who said it wasn't right, you know, the right time or the right kind of offering for them, or we were too, you know, kind of, they were looking at more kind of seeds, like maybe Series A, and we were pre-seed. So, you know, he's keeping a record of it to say, you know, thank you for actually taking the time to give us some feedback. And, you know, hopefully we'll be back in the future, or hopefully we don't have to be back in the future, which would be very nice. So yeah, a lot of that. And obviously asking people for recommendations as well, like who should we be speaking to? This is our offering. And I think
that's a great tip.
That,
you know, that investors know other investors will, I mean, I found that as well, like they're from more of an abundance mindset, and if it's not for them, they're very likely to recommend someone that it is from, right?
Yeah. And I think just having conversations with people, even if it might not be the right fit, just having those conversations really help, because like you say, they might know somebody else. I think I learned a lesson in terms of refinement of the offer and refinement of the cold kind of message on LinkedIn, for example, really helped. So yeah, option A didn't work, you know, let's try option B, and kind of just refining that message.
All right. So you got narrowed down to 3, and then you had the choice to negotiate between those 3. And then when that deal was done, or the one that did eventually go through, another one fell through, and then you did another one. But how quickly were you surprised how quickly the money came through, or how did that process go through? When did the money hit your account?
Yeah, I'll never forget the moment. It's funny because investment, unless you're really lucky, you know, it takes months, years, you know, it takes so long, unless you're you're very, very lucky, it takes a few weeks. I don't know anyone who's ever done that. It takes so long, and you go through so many, like you have to climb over so many hurdles, and it's like that that image that you see a lot in terms of like an entrepreneur's growth. It's not that A to B race, it's the falling in the crocodile pit and, you know, climbing over a mountain sort of journey. And I feel like investment is very much like that. And all of a sudden you've done all those checks, and you don't hear back for a few days, and you kind of push things through. Everything just accelerates so fast, and so fast you don't realize, you've got to get things signed, and you're like, oh, this is actually happening now. And I remember I was actually working in New York, and I think I posted on LinkedIn about it. It sounds glamorous, but it wasn't. It was cold, it was wet, it was snowing. And I remember when I got the phone call through to say, like, we need some more information. Can you get this over to us? And yeah, it was a miserable day. And I thought,
Yeah.
I just thought to myself, investment is not, it's not the super glamorous thing you might see, or some people might portray. It is. It can be dark and stormy sometimes. But yeah, it accelerated very, very quick, and I was like, oh, it's actually happening. This is great, and almost a little bit anticlimactic, because you think, I've done this work for the last 2-3 years, and it's just kind of figures now in a bank account, and it's great, and it's exciting. You think, God, I can do all the things I want to do. It's almost like the pressure comes off your shoulders of, okay, I've raised investment now. This is the hardest money I'll ever have to raise. But then the pressure goes back on of, now you've got investors and people who have committed their time and money into your business. So you've got to now do what you said you were going to do. So, but I think it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so now you got the money in the account, and are you spending it in the way that you predicted you would? Is it enough money? How has it transformed the business? Let's talk about post investment.
Yeah, so we're actually, funnily enough, had to give our kind of quarterly update recently. We've not had a full quarter yet, but it was really positive to say to investors, we've actually spent less than we predicted. We've been a lot kind of savvier with our spend. Trying to imagine that it's basically every penny that we have is the last pound, or every pound that we have is the last pound we have to spend. And where would you really spend this money?
Yeah.
Again, speaking to my accountant, I'll have to give him a plug later, but he said he's seen it so many times where people get an investment in, and they start spending 5, 6, 7 grand a month on a PR agency, for example. Not slagging off PR agencies, it's just an example. But he said, without that investment, they never would have spent that money. I think they just kind of got swayed by, oh, we've got loads of money in the bank, let's go all out and do it. But I think you've really got to think, okay, if this is my last pound, where would I spend it? And being really savvy in terms of recruitment. So where you said you were going to employ one person, don't think, well, oh, we could hire 2 or 3. Thinking long term and just doing the right things. And it's been nice to say that, yeah, we've spent less. We obviously want to still generate as much revenue as we promised with that. But it's been exciting, being able to hire people, do all the exciting, shiny marketing things that we said we were going to do. And build, ultimately, build the business. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, and what about, you were talking about, it wasn't just about the money, right? And how much support, advice, what's been the real nuggets of information you've got from your investor aside from the money?
Yeah, they've been absolutely incredible, to be fair. I think the moment the kind of investment came in, money's in the bank, you think, oh, there's going to be a hell of a lot of pressure on me now, in terms of people are going to be looking at you and making sure you're doing things correctly, which I think has to be done. But there's that kind of worry that you think they're going to take over as an investor. And I think anyone kind of going through this stage should have that conversation with them and work out post investment what that relationship looked like. Because an angel, for example, might want to be really involved, and you've been doing this for a long time, and you kind of want to just get your head down and do it yourself. So I was really pleasantly surprised at how gaining investment didn't mean that people were just going to come into the business and just take over. And honestly, our investors have been incredible. They know that I'm an expert in what I do. They know I've done it before. They're there if I need them. They help in lots of different ways, and I feel like the more you kind of give them, the more they'll give back. So the more you update them, the more you ask for advice. Just generally, they've obviously got other businesses. You're not the only business that they've invested in. So there's others out there. But if you are giving them kind of what they need on a regular basis, they're great, and they're just kind of allowing me to to get on with it, and it's great. I know what to do. I know who to hire. Obviously, there will be moments in the next 3 years, 5 years, whatever it might be, where things get a little bit tough and I need some advice. So I just feel like they are there. So definitely, yeah, would recommend that. Work out what that kind of relationship is going to be post investment.
Well, I mean, you better let you get on with it, really. I mean, thank you so much. It's been absolutely fascinating. I've loved to hear your story. I know that other people will love to hear your story. And thank you so much for talking to me.
No, thank you so much for having me. And can I just say, we are still raising, which it never ends. Right. So we raised the initial kind of 150,000 through SEIS. We're still looking for angels to help us with an additional 100,000, so we can hit our 250 target, which will then release some other funds, which will be great. So yeah, still on the fundraising journey. So any angel investors out there, please, get in touch.
Well,
on LinkedIn.
I'll have them on this show. So I mean, I will definitely do my best to spread the word and help you out there.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think having an investment fund kind of already involved, really helps.
Massively. Yeah. I mean, just especially as a lead, if you've got a lead strategic investor, and other investors will definitely follow once you get that one. But the hard bit is, you've done the hard bit, is getting that first one, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, brilliant. Thank you so much, Rob. I'll let you get on, as I said, and yeah, let's speak soon.
Thank you.
Good luck with the business.
Cheers.